Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of BIM Pure Live. I am your host, Nicolas Catelier. I am an architect, a BIM specialist, and the founder of BIM Pure. If you are watching live today, April 30th, you can type in the chat where you are watching from. And we have two amazing guests for you today. Before introducing them, a couple of quick things to mention. First, I want to say thank you to our sponsor, which is Piros, and this is a detail management system for Revit. And it's quite amazing. I found out about it last fall at AU, and they're sponsoring the whole season. Each episode, we explore a different feature. And this week, the feature that we are going to be exploring is organization and search. So imagine that you have the Google search for your entire detail library in all of your projects. So by default, you search, in this case, for door head. You can see the list of all typical details. You can click and you can see the detail in context, or you can see the entire sheet where it's been placed on. Or you can also reset and use tags, for example. So if you can tag all your details with the correct one and easily access the detail you're actually looking for by using these. But the really killer feature that I'm quite excited to talk about is, let's say that for some reason you don't find anything. Well, that's because you have all details and typical details. So typical details will be your entire collections, the curated version. But if you don't find anything in that one, you can search for all details, and that will be every single Revit project. So even though they're not officially curated, you can still search for your old Revit project to see if you find the detail you're looking for. And this search feature is extremely intelligent. You don't have to tag and add metadata to everything. It's searching through all of the text in the description of the detail itself. So it is an AI-enabled search. It's very smart, and it helps you find everything in your back catalog of detail. And you can set them to reference only, which means that only admin can load them to a new project or not, depending if you want. So maybe you have some older details that you don't want to make available for download to all of the users. You just want them for reference only to check it out and verify. So that is Piros. Check it out at piros.com. It's quite an amazing tool, and I'm thrilled that they're sponsoring this season of BIM Pure Live. All right, what else we got? The next episode is going to be 2 weeks away from now. What date is that? I think it's May 14 with Paul O'Carroll, from the CEO of Arcall, an emerging app. And we're going to go inside of it. They're about to have a public launch. Very excited. That is 2 weeks away from now at 3 p.m. Eastern as well. And finally, the BIM Pure membership. As always, if you want to learn Revit, Dynamo, and download content, family collections, and template, check it out at bimpure.com. We also have live masterclasses where we go deep on some technical topics. So recently we had a series about Dynamo. The next one is about lookup tables, on how to use Excel inside of your Revit projects. So learn more and subscribe at bimpure.com. All right, that's all the housekeeping that I had for today. And now let's introduce the guests. Leah Bayer is president of Architects FORA, a mid-sized architectural firm specializing in affordable housing. She's an alumni of Cal Poly. She also serves on multiple AIA boards and council, and received the Young Architects Award in 2023 from the IAA California. And the other guest is Andy Roberts. She's a licensed architect from ORT University in Uruguay. She lived in Germany for a while and pursued graduate studies in Dessau. She co-founded Slantis with her friend Mercedes Karikiri in 2016 and is the CEO of the company. If you're curious about Slantis' origin story, check out the episode that I had 2 years ago with Mercedes, where we go about what Slantis is and how it got founded and so on. So without further ado, let's move on to our guests. Welcome, Andy and Leah.
Thank you.
Hi, Nico. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, well, maybe we should talk about the story of how we got this talk in here. This was basically a rejected AIA talk, wasn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
That's all. This is all Andy's fault.
Yeah. So we had a conversation with Leah about talking about what we're going to talk about today, but on AIA National Conference, and we received kind of like the boomer of not getting selected, as many people do. And I decided to post it on LinkedIn, the rejection and what we wanted to talk about, and then it was like boom, Nico reaching out, and like I don't know how many other people reaching out. I was like, okay, let's create the space for you two to actually discuss and talk about what you wanted to talk about. So yay.
Well, I saw the description and I thought I want to hear this talk. So, and the best way to make it happen is to set it up. So there you go.
We really appreciate the invite. And also, I think there's a fun lesson there that like a rejection does not have to be a rejection. Just keep on putting it out there and you'll find your platform for sure.
All right. So today's topic is
Totally.
about automation and people. I'm curious if you have further things you want to say about your company, and I hope my introduction was right about the both of you. If you had anything to add, or if we can also move straight, I'm sure you have lots to share and talk about.
No, I would like to add that with Leah, we've been kind of like talking a lot, and we share this path of both being women founders in this industry that is incredibly rare, and the way we lead our companies and how we approach the business side of architecture, and has a lot to do what we are going to talk about today. It's fundamentally different, and a lot of that we believe it's coming from us being women founders and leaders. So I'd like to add that because it's part of who we are, and it's part also why we got together to kind of like push this conversation forward.
And how did you? Maybe it's covered in the presentation. How did you get started working together? How did that happen?
It's funny, we were just talking about this.
Hmm.
Um,
Yes.
I actually worked at Perkins and Will right before I started my practice in 2018 and left because I had these ideas for what I wanted to found and realized I needed to do it myself. And as I started sharing what I was working on and what I was building on LinkedIn, the director of operations from Perkins and Will reached out and he's like, hey, I think you really need to talk to Andy. You two have a lot in common. Just reach out and say hi. And so I was intrigued because he knew a lot about what I wanted to build because we had had conversations about my beliefs and the practice of architecture. So I did. I reached out to Andy and immediately was like, "Oh yeah, he's right. There's there's a lot of commonality here." And we had the opportunity to connect in person not long after that. I think it was it the Women's Leadership Summit our first time seeing each other? Or, I don't remember.
I think it was, yeah, it was WLS San Jose, and you were actually part of the team that was organizing it. So like, and kudos to that team. It was an amazing work there, but it was crazy. So yeah, that's when we connected in person, and it's just like when you have this synergy with people that you cannot explain, like you are absolutely aligned. So I think that's what happened like virtually, and then of course kind of like the confirmation in person that we were kind of seeing the same things through the same lens. So it was kind of cool. So we ended up like connecting there and like stayed in touch and like all the time back and forth thing, figuring out if we can do stuff together. And beginning of this year, Leah reached out to me and like some of her partners too, and figure like they have a good project for us to collaborate on. For those that don't know, Slantis supports architectural firms. So you can develop your projects from this kind of like collaborative and technological perspective, and help you deliver your projects. So we had this conversation on how we could help, and we've been working in this fantastic project ever since, and had a few ideas on how we wanted to approach the project a bit differently. So we're going to talk about a bit about that further on in what we have to share today. But yeah, we've been actually collaborating for a few months only.
But I've been wanting to work with Andy's team for years. So we can talk about the firm a little bit later, but um, I have been working on building up this practice and knowing that I wanted to partner with Andy's team, but needed enough work in order to make that make sense. So I think it's really been like years that I've been looking for the right opportunity. So I'm super
Yeah,
excited that we finally have gotten to
that's
partner
true.
this year.
All right, so I'm excited about today's topic. There's a lot of discussion. Is AI going to replace architect? Are we going to be irrelevant? So I like that
Yeah,
the whole premise of your show is that actually maybe it's quite the opposite, and it liberates us and it makes us more free. It makes us more connected. So how? I guess maybe I can move to the slides as well. But how did you come to have this vision, this more positive vision of tech?
um, I think uh, we've been having this conversation for a long time with Leah about collaboration and technology and how and we have this conversation internally a lot within Slantis, like how technology is kind of like the big enabler. We've been having it even before the AI conversation, and Leah too, like ever since she founded the Fora, it was all remote, where remote was something that was scary for everyone. We are born as a remote company too because we're supporting American companies and we are in South America. So kind of all these intersections was also part of why we got together. And the technology aspect is for us, and even why we started Slantis at the very beginning with Mayor was all about how we can change the practice of architecture, which is what Leah was describing before through her Perkins and Will lifetime. So how can we think about technology as something that really helps us instead of just constraining us, and then how we can articulate that into like really making it work within a business framework. And Leah can definitely expand on this. We've been having long conversations about this.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that both of us, sometimes I describe it as like that we're tech forward firms, but really I think tech enabled is the right term because we're really people forward because we're tech enabled. And coming from this perspective of both being really excited about technology, but also being women and having sort of this more feminist lens of focusing on relationships and people has brought us to a unique intersection that I think we hope helps other architects feel more comfortable with the change in technology. I think both of us are really excited about the opportunities in the future for what we can become as a profession. And we both recognize that there's a lot of fear around these conversations. There sort of always has been. Architects are notoriously fearful of change, fearful of technology. Um, Maybe Andy, you could put our little emoji slide for how we feel about that next. But
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
we
I just put the one with the we can see the waving hand now.
okay, yeah, yeah.
Okay,
So this
there.
this is sort of how we feel about the conversation around technology. But yeah, everyone's been talking about how tech, particularly AI, is going to be taking away all of our jobs. And there's, statistics all the time about the percentage of loss of different types of jobs and how this might disrupt the industry and architecture altogether. And as I mentioned, architects tend to also be very hesitant to change or afraid of keeping up with new tools and platforms. So, as leaders in sort of these tech enabled firms, we have had to overcome these fears ourselves, also with like our business partners and our employees and our clients and our peers, and have thought about a different way to maybe frame this discussion to help people adapt a little bit sooner and be more excited about embracing change rather than afraid of change, because we really believe in this as the future, and that it's critical that we do it right, or architects are going to like continue to lose out on the space and our expertise as other industries encroach upon and try to take over what we're doing. So.
Did I change it there? Okay.
Yeah. So this is sort of our frame. A lot of people talk about what's going to change. We would rather talk about what isn't going to change as it relates to technology and the advancement of AI. Because what isn't going to change is really what shows us what remains at the heart of what we do, what connects all of us, and what carries us forward with purpose. So if we can focus on that and make sure that what we're doing is always in the interest of investing in what isn't going to change, that's the best way to be successful and to adapt to the evolution of practice.
You're thinking, Nico, you want to say something?
No. I'm controlling, keeping my eye on the stream, on the chat, making sure everything is fine. So that's why I might have a face like this.
Okay, great. So into Leah's point, what we deeply think that it's going to remain constant are human connections. The most important thing we think the most important thing is how people relate to each other, how we cooperate, how we actually work together. This is not even said by us, but like proven time and again that like human cooperation and connectivity between people, it's kind of like the major difference across history, and the ultimate technology. Like we've talked about this for a while, like in Sapiens, the book Yuval Noah Harari talks a lot about this, like how human cooperation is actually like what has pushed humanity forward, and how this will remain constant through time, regardless of the different types of technology. And like through his book, he explains like the written systems, and then the printing machine, and then like when it comes to technology, and then now through the next disruption, let's say, which is AI. I think everybody and us being part and having experienced the pandemic, we are very, very much aware of like the importance of human connection in our lives as people. So we're kind of like in this interesting spot in time. Talking with Leah, we were having this kind of like back and forth about like architecture is incredibly collaborative. Like we are by definition a highly collaborative profession. Drawings, models, and like everything we do in our day-to-day jobs are kind of like just artifacts, but like the real work is about like trust and teamwork and communication, and how we are actually developing our team members to actually push kind of like our craft, and how we exchange ideas, and how we bring creativity, and how we understand everyone's unique perspectives, and kind of like bring it all together in design. Like and that is a skill, and that is kind of like the essence of architecture, is kind of like all these perspectives put together and kind of like combine and materialize in a built thing, let's say. Something interesting also about like human connections that I didn't mention before is I've been kind of like obsessed about this for a while now. Like we've talked in a few spaces with Mercedes about this. Mer is my business partner, for those who don't know it. And you can check her BIM Pure also episode that she recorded a few years ago. We've been obsessed about how human connection is hardly wired into our brains. Like we've checked all of this research that show that when you are connecting with someone, all of these mirror neurons are lighting up in your brain, and how your brain actually connects instantaneously when someone is talking to you, and like what happens from a like brain wiring process, and all the learning areas in your brain start lighting up when you're connecting and talking to someone that you're really interested about what they're talking. So like we are hardly wired to connect, which is kind of crazy and awesome at the same time. So architecture is kind of like the byproduct of this kind of like human connections at some point. So it's kind of interesting. And kind of like fast forwarding and adding kind of like the business perspective to kind of like this science of connections between people and architecture. This has been proven time and again. Like Harvard Business Review has talked a lot about this, on how collaborative teams versus non-collaborative teams are much better for business performance. And like by collaborative teams, we mean teams that are engaged in communication, that are they feel trusted and safe. They share knowledge effectively, and they work together towards common goals. They are really aligned in what they need to do and push it together. Whereas non-collaborative teams that are usually working in silos, and that they have limited communication, or that they only have one direction of communication, and then cooperation among team members is broken for some reason. So this is critical to how we practice architecture and how we are seeing our practice, and then how we add kind of like the extra layer of technology into this. Like I feel that this is kind of like the first thing that everybody should know about collaboration itself.
I do have
so
a question.
I'm passing the baton.
In this case,
of course,
it's presented as somewhat of a binary choice. Often I guess it's somewhere in between. I guess there are different levels of collaboration. So how is this measured? Can you measure how much you collaborate, and to know how we can fix it?
So this is kind of like correlated to this, which is high performing teams. You are kind of like getting ahead of our presentation.
Yeah, we
all right,
we actually
I'll be patient.
we'll talk about, we're testing that out ourselves, and so we'll share a little bit about that case study in the end. But there are ways to measure, and we'll share a little bit about how we're measuring that ourselves. But what's interesting is, if you take a look at the graph before this, you talk about it, looking at it binary, collaboration versus not collaborative, and the graph is actually looking at like collaboration over time. And so there are some teams that at some points are more collaborative or a little bit less, but really it's truly like sustained collaboration over time that leads to that exponential growth. So investing in systems that foster those relationships and the qualities that lead to high performing teams is what's critical, from like a human standpoint and a business standpoint. So if you look at what is collaboration, it's really about high performing teams. And there are certain qualities that are used to define what a high performing team is, and what's necessary for authentic collaboration. And those qualities are trust, safety, alignment, belonging, autonomy, emotional intelligence, and social intelligence. And you'll notice that these are really like the fundamental qualities of healthy human connection, and not necessarily about like technical expertise. So it's about this ability to feel safe and relate to one another that leads to a high performing collaborative team. And it's not just about like this feel good, emotional, social intelligence. From like a social standpoint, it's also heavily influences your impact on productivity in business. So high performing teams, highly collaborative teams result in 50% higher productivity, and 74% less stress. So what's good for people is good for business. And when we invest in collaboration, we unlock the best in our teams, we attract and keep the best talent, and so we're building a resilient practice that is likely to last a lot longer and be a lot more prosperous in the future. So as technology is advancing and we consider how important this like factor of human relationships and collaboration is in the impact on our businesses, what's really important is that we don't center around the tools themselves and investing and plugging into the tools, that we are focusing on implementing systems and policies using these tools to directly or indirectly enhance well-being and human connection, because that's what has the highest impact on practice and on business overall. So, Andy, we could maybe share a little bit about what that looks like on our teams, both of us as these tech-enabled architecture practices that are fundamentally about people. I know you have a story about developing and building trust.
Yeah, so we wanted to share kind of like how this looks like on our day-to-day practice, and not just like stay with the graphs and numbers, and how we are actually pushing this forward. So the other day, I was hearing to a really cool talk that Brian Chesky, the one of the founders and CEO of Airbnb, was discussing about. Like, he's very he has these very strong views on how a company should be run, and it very much aligns to what we were discussing. A lot of what we were discussing, like two things that he said that kind of like resonated a lot with me, and that we do a lot within Slantis. One was like the language of business is numbers, and everybody keeps repeating that, and everybody keeps saying that, and he's very strong on saying like the language of business is people. And I feel that everything that we were talking, and architecture being highly collaborative, like we should be more focused on our people. And this is not only, as Leah was mentioned, like by the policies, but like how we are actually structuring our practice to put our people first. And then another thing that he was saying was a lot about, like, he's very provoking and like thought-provoking, let's say, about management and leadership. And he says that if you're a really good leader, then you are kind of partnering up with the people that are reporting to you, and like this, it creates kind of like a partnership instead of like a top-down relationship, and it creates kind of like a team instead of a boss and like someone that it's following. That really resonated with me, and actually I shared it with a few people that work together with me on an everyday basis, because it feels like overstepping each other. It's like, okay, this is your realm of work, or is it mine? And actually, is it both? Like, you cannot push the company forward if you're not in the small details and understanding what's going on, and like really rolling up your sleeves and being part of the problem and also part of the solution. And then you need to surround yourself with people that are really, really good at what you aren't. So it creates kind of like this complementary people aspect of how we are building up our company and then how we're building up our teams, that it's critical to the success of the business. So I don't know if this is obvious from a leadership standpoint, and there are a lot of like literature about this, but then in practice I feel that still there is a very strong look into the numbers, and a very weak look into kind of like this smaller aspect that for me are kind of like a few of the keys for success. So kind of like both, like the first one is like the language of business is people, and the second one is, and these are not mine, but heavily resonate on how we run in Slantis, and the second one is like everybody that it's working, it's partnering up, and it's like team mentality and mindset instead of a like kind of top-down dynamic. So this is kind of like how we were thinking. And then I think this also connects to what Leah wanted to share as a story, because both of us started our companies because we were seeing that something fundamentally was wrong about how we were practicing architecture. And for me, it's very engraved in this about I think in architecture, I would add like people are incredibly focused on design and craft, on like getting it right in terms of in the technical aspect, and like the people again is kind of like outside of the importance of business. So yeah, I'll pass it to Leah that she wanted to tell kind of her own story of how Fora came to life and why this is kind of like all interrelated.
I have a couple of questions as well, but perhaps we can wait after
Sure.
Leah's story.
See if maybe I can answer some of them, and then if not, dive into it. But yeah, I'd love to share. I think, having Mercedes on before, you got to hear a little bit about the origination of Slantis and how their incredible team works. And since you all don't know me, you probably don't know Fora because we're a very tiny team. I thought I could share a little bit about our history and our background and how this practice came to be from my perspective. It has an interesting sort of combining of forces. Um, we are, for those of us that know us, we're sort of known for being this like technology forward practice because we are fully remote and we have been fully remote since before the pandemic. So when things with COVID happened, we had a lot of people reaching out to us all about like the tools we use, the technology we use, how do we make this work? How can we work remotely? And it's funny because when I started the practice, that wasn't the goal of things. And really, it's still not the goal of things to be known as this like technological forward company. It started because early in my career, I was exposed to, through my own experiences and through the experiences of my peers, so many inequities in the practice of architecture. So many people suffering both sort of within architecture and because of the way that we've structured our built environment, particularly in the profession, women and parents and caregivers, anyone that has like a life outside of architecture suffered. And the reports of like the amount of attrition, people dropping out at different levels of their career was just insane to me. And the loss of talent um, it seemed like just like a bad situation for business. So I didn't understand from a business perspective why we were treating people poorly. And certainly as a professional coming up in this industry, I didn't want to be going through this for my entire career. And I think I just started to like build up this rage inside. And when it was time for me to look at starting my own family, I didn't see what I needed in order to support my journey in that process and the flexibility and sort of authority and autonomy that I needed. So I was like, screw it. I'm just going to leave and I'm going to build something of my own. And so
Really? So,
that's where
so
this,
that your business started out of anger a little bit.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think there's nothing like spite to really, light
Mm.
light you on fire and see that you can prove people wrong. And I had a lot of people actually tell me that what I wanted to do was not
Mm.
possible. Art Gensler actually, little story. Art Gensler told me that my entire business plan was a bad idea. um,
So you proved it wrong.
through a business plan competition that I was in that he was a jury member of. But I ended up winning, so I think ultimately he kind of enjoyed that I was
Very,
pushing against the grain because art did incredible things that were
yeah.
just unheard of when he was starting his practice. So um, yeah, it came out of anger and a need to prove people wrong and do things differently because I wanted to be treated better and I wanted to treat other people better. And in order to build what I had envisioned that would allow me the flexibility to move, I was in the Bay Area, didn't want to stay in the Bay Area, wanted to raise a family somewhere else, didn't want to start a business there and then have to like close the business and start something somewhere else and then have to fire people because they could no longer come in the office. That didn't make sense. I was like, okay, remote, we're going to go remote. And then using tools in the cloud. This is before everything was in the cloud, so that information was accessible by anyone, anywhere, anytime, so that now we're both remote and we can work anytime we need to because we have access to information that we need. All of these like technological tools became the backbone to create a practice that was intended to provide care to the people who worked there, to create trust, flexibility, autonomy, purpose, growth, and transparency. Those were the ultimate goals, not the technology itself. But everybody wants to know like what technology do you use? How do you do that? Like, well, you could really use any technology. It's about the purpose. So yeah, it's that accessible framework that allowed people to work in a way that was best for them, which also provided a lot of financial savings for me, actually, like not paying rent, really great. You can invest that in other things. And investing in a little story, investing in these policies for the past 7 years, when it was fine for me to finally step away and start a family of my own last year, where other firms are sort of afraid of losing staff and missing out on productivity and profits and whatever, not wanting to pay people for parental leave because they don't have the funds for that. We made sure we were saving and investing so that we could pay people to take time away. And then me as the president of the company being able to like leave and unplug and step away, really testing whether or not we've created this team full of leaders that I could trust, that understood what they needed to do, that could carry the ship, that my partners were all on the same page. We all had the access to information that we needed in order to carry this firm forward successfully. And it worked perfectly fine. Like, imagine that. I was able to step away, have a family. The firm ran on its own, and not in a way that I feel threatened that I'm going to lose my job, because we are all important, but we all have lives and we need to support that like flexibility and ability to step away. So it was really a great test of these systems that we were able to build. And we have been growing and doing better than ever this year. So I think, it's working. And
it worked. Well, congrats.
Yeah.
You proved them
it's
wrong.
Exciting.
Yeah, good job.
Yeah, and I hope that we continue to for a very long time. So that's the goal.
So something you've mentioned was actually the question I had in mind. So Andy mentioned the importance of collaboration, and you mentioned the importance of flexibility, and that linked me to the question: so how does remote work fits in? Is collaboration, is our remote work and collaboration in contradiction, or maybe they aren't? How do you feel about it?
I think that you could do either very well in person or remotely. You can be just as collaborative in either environment. It's about the intentionality behind how you do it. And we've had a lot of people question how we can collaborate remotely. Like, how do you sketch together? And how do you like have those conversations with the person next to you about, something that just comes up randomly in conversation, the water cooler conversations. And it's because we use Slack for all of our communication. So actually, there's a lot more communication happening because people can witness conversations. They don't have to just happen to be in the right room at the right time. You can actually look and see and participate. Even if you're not there when they're having them, you can come back like the next day and participate in chat. And then, there's virtual whiteboards. You can do all of the like sketching and drawing and looking at like different models and views. And precedent images and sort of like your traditional pinup in a virtual space, just as you can in person. And in reality, I think it's in some ways better because it allows for contribution in ways that's not just like verbal, or for the people that feel most confident to stand up in front of the room and start like sketching on a board, which tend to be the certain types of like personalities that get heard over and over and over again, and are not the more quiet leaders, the more like sort of introverted or thoughtful people who then in this virtual space can actually like submit their comments quietly. They don't have to talk. They can put little post-its, they can put little sketches, they can add their contributions in a different way. So we have found it a little bit more equitable to different types of people. And compared to like the office work that I was in before here, that didn't really invest in making sure that you're collaborative, where you didn't even talk to the person who is sitting next to you at the desk next to you. It's been much more collaborative in my experience than other practices, and I'm sure Andy feels similarly.
Yeah, well,
No,
that was
I
also
think...
my sorry, Andy. My other question.
No, go.
An introvert versus extrovert. So how can we deal with that in collaboration? Of course, I think you can be an introvert and still collaborate on a team, but it's true in certain contexts. The extroverted person's ideas are expressed more easily, and I guess with some digital tools that can help with that.
Hmm.
And Andy,
Uh,
what is your point of view about the remote work versus not? I remember Mercedes had this. Is it some sort of honeycomb, the concept that you had for the office plan or something?
well, yes.
Mm,
So, uh, kind of like adding to what Leo was saying and to your question, Nico, for me, and we were just talking about this, like the kind of key to unlocking remote is trust. Like if you trust your team members, then you know that you'll be able to navigate whatever it's required, like regardless if you're in person or remote. So for me, it's like, so it's leadership and trust, like how the leader of the whatever team that you're involved in creates that safe space for in order to just pull out the work. And to your question, like we love like, and even now that we are like hybrid in our offices, is like we love that when we are coming to the office, it's kind of like a full experience and like collaboration is at the very center. So to your question, we design, like we're architects, so we design our office with collaboration in mind. So we were having this conversation about like most office spaces are designed for like optimization of how many people fit. And what if we change that mindset and we figure out like, or we come up with a design that fosters collaboration. So we were kind of like iterating and came up with the idea of an hexagon where people are actually looking at each other but not fully seeing each other's monitors. You feel like you're in an actual team, but then you have your privacy because of the shape, and this is so architecturally design fun. And it has proven to work amazingly well because it kind of like definitely pushes for this idea to be talking to each other and engaging with each other. Plus, over time, I've realized, and what Leah was mentioning, like that people are sitting next to each other, not talking to each other. Like we have kind of like the spice of Latin American culture. That people are really warm and like you really want to engage with other people. So for us, it makes it easier within the office space. But yes, we have kind of like the design. The whole office space is designed for collaboration experience. Let's say yes.
do you see
Good memory,
differences?
by the
Yeah.
way.
Do you see differences in between the US and South America? There was actually someone in the comments saying ECBL, South American Architectural School are based in teamwork and collaboration. Here in the States, it's more competition. Is this something that,
Yes.
yeah? Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't generalize like South America, but I can speak about
Uruguay.
Uruguay and some schools in Argentina where our offices are. Uruguay, like there are two main or like three main focuses. First one is constructability. Like architecture here is very much focused on construction, so we know how to put together buildings. Um, the second, and for that, like I think it's kind of like as a consequence, that being incredibly complex from day one, you need to have a team to support and like figure out how to put together the building. Otherwise, like you won't be able to resolve it. The other thing is that universities set up to be in groups. Like we have kind of like these studio practices where like you bring your own design and everybody is kind of like giving feedback on like, okay, the stairs should move this way or the other way. Like also the professor, but like everyone from your peers and other students are having an opinion. So kind of like that feedback process becomes really part of who you are as an architect. And I think that really helps a lot through the practice itself. And then the third one is it's very long. Like having your architectural degree takes a long time. So it's great to like you start creating kind of like this backup group that it's running through all of your, like for me it took about 7 years to get my degree, and when you get your degree you're also licensed, but it's a long run. So if you have kind of like your tribe and you're back and forthing a lot with them, then I guess it feels less time. So there are definitely differences. So it's definitely more team oriented from the beginning. Yes.
Yeah, in the US, granted, I'm getting old. So when I was in architecture school, it really was about sort of developing like the designer, right? And the focus was still on your typical like solo old white guy architect, and that's who you saw and who you were working towards becoming, and you were developing your own like design skills and language to become that person. And when we had to do group work, it was resented. Like people hated to do like group projects. However, we have an internship program. We also hire quite a few people out of school. So I get to interface with a lot of students, and I am encouraged by what I'm seeing coming out of architecture schools in the US now, which seem to be much more focused on social issues, community engagement, looking at things more at like an urban scale and how systems and people work together. It seems to be more collaborative, and overall, younger generations absolutely have a better focus on balance and what's important in life, and that it's not just all about working all the time to work. So I hope that that's changing. From what I see, it seems like it's changing, but I can't say for sure because it's been a while since I've been in architecture school.
All
Speaking
right.
about change.
Let's move back to the slides. I'm sure you have lots of good content. And I'll see you
Yeah,
next time.
so I mean we're here because we're talking about architecture, and we've really been talking about like or sorry, we're talking about technology. We've been talking about people and connection a lot. Um, so we should probably get into a little bit about what is changing, because things are going to change, and that's a good thing. Things need to change and evolve over time. So let's dig into that a little bit. Andy, do you want to? We're wondering if we can pull the people who are attending and get some feedback from them
Sorry.
first.
Yeah. So we were thinking about like people that are viewing right now can put on the chat what architecture business are you in? You think you're more on the design architecture business or on the business? And Nico, we don't have access to the chat, so you can let us know like if people are putting or what they are putting there.
Uh, yeah, I can do a poll actually. Let's try that.
Okay.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I can keep going. I'll come back to the results.
Okay. So on the design space, we were hoping, or at least we were thinking that most of the architects present in the room here would say that they are on the design business. And it makes sense because like we are all architects, we are all about design, and we were discussing with Leah that commodity is such kind of like a dirty word in our industry. So let's we wanted to kind of like going on this. It's like if you are on the design space and design equals knowledge, like design takes a lot of time and effort to really understand and to really get it as a craft. So basically, what you're doing is kind of like growing your knowledge on design. So we were thinking about, okay, now what architecture business are you really in? And is it knowledge or commodity instead of like design and commodity? And if you're thinking about that you're actually selling knowledge as a business instead of design and architecture, then you should structure your whole business differently. Does this make sense? And Leah, you want to add into the conversation?
Yeah, I think like we all think about architecture as this like long game craft, right? It takes a long time to develop a level of knowledge and expertise to be seen as the trusted and reputable designer. And most people, I think the common public, if you ask them to think about an architect, they're going to think about like an older person who's been practicing for decades, that has like the glasses and the eccentric outfit and whatever. Probably somebody who's been saying they're going to retire for the in the next 5 years, and they've been saying that for 20 years, right? Because it does take quite a while to develop this level of knowledge and mastery in order to be the like master designer and architect. So truly what you are amassing in your career is a level of knowledge to be seen as a reputable and a well-rounded architect, and that takes time, right? So investing in systems to develop that knowledge for you, for your team, is really what you should be focusing on if you want to develop a strong architectural practice. Otherwise, if you're not investing in knowledge, you're kind of selling repeatable data that ends up being just a commodity. And sometimes that happens. There are definitely those production houses that don't continue to advance. They set something up, and that's how it is. And they have people that can just produce that over and over again, and that's their model, and that's fine. But that's not really what we're talking about and what we're interested in. So what we're really talking about is, as you said, when you're selling design, you're selling knowledge.
So we were, and this is critical to our conversation. We were talking about like let it steal our jobs, like technology, and like with the AI boom, like we had to ask ourselves like what is knowledge, and we were having this conversation where knowledge is kind of like the understanding and the true interpretation of information, and shaped by experience, which is what Leah was saying about kind of like this old guy and like learning and context and like really making sense of the information and kind of like connecting the data and what's happening and like giving it context to it and using it for something that it's practically applicable. So then we came out with a conversation. Okay. So like if you are actually like you are on the design space and design is knowledge, so how do you foster knowledge? And we came up. We were having this conversation a lot about kind of like these three layers of understanding of knowledge and information, and like a lot has been talked about, and like I feel that we have a superpower as designers because we're able to kind of like transmit this graphically and represent it clearly. So we were talking about kind of like the first level of how knowledge is generated and created, and it's like top level knowledge keeper, maintain the pyramid structure and artificially keeps people in lower level productions, which is what Leah was talking about, like commodity, and like all those low level people are kind of like processing data and information. Communication is only linear, so like you only get to get yourself informed or like learn from or either your horizontal peers or like top down. So it's very slow and it's very kind of like susceptible to just tearing apart, because if one of those pieces it's not there, then like the whole system it's fragile.
And Andy,
So
this structure came really, you were doing research and sort of these like business structures, and this came directly from like the Industrial Revolution, which makes
true.
sense, right? You have a business owner then has maybe sort of like mid-level managers that need to manage a whole bunch of people that are like producing
Yeah.
goods. And so you need all of that manpower in order to produce, in order to be productive and meet the demands of society and what they're creating. And it's not really like you're not selling knowledge in that instance, right? You're selling a product, a good, a commodity. So the birth of this is sort of like
Yeah.
pyramid hierarchical structure comes from that type of industry and really is not very well applied to a creative industry, a design industry like architecture. And yet we're still practicing in this way. And so looking at what is that evolution and how does technology enable a different model of practice that allows us to get a level of knowledge faster. And so there's this second one that you
Yeah,
created.
and no, and kind of like the first one to add is thanks Leah for kind of like the clarification there. Is the Industrial Revolution model is like from the 1700s. So it's like way old, and like we keep repeating the same model because it's just legacy, and like nobody actually, and it's a complex problem to solve. But like again, coming to the technology layer, I think we're kind of like this fantastic place in history of opportunity to kind of like really leverage technology to our advantage and kind of like change how this it's happening. So moving into the second level, and we've been having these conversations internally a lot. We shared exactly this in our strategic meeting last year. At Slantis, we were having this conversation where the model should be more of a network model, sorry, where right now it's where FORA and Slantis are operating, like kind of like this network it using kind of like digital nodes within the structure, and like it's more free and information access is more fluid, and like you have just like transparency and accessibility to like the knowledge of the company, so to speak. So you are able to share it and to feed it from the structure itself. And it's very interesting that we are architects talking about like organization structure, because like at some point we understand the structure, like we're architects. So why nobody actually thought about this before, right? And then on the third level, and this is where we are willing to push ourselves, and what we wanted to reflect on is like communication has moved into kind of like this whole third level of like real-time connectivity, and this is where kind of like AI helps us make sense. Like information kind of exploded, like data and information kind of exploded 2 years ago with kind of like a open AI, GPT, and all the other models. So how we can use that and integrate it into our structure models, and how we can exponentiate knowledge, because information and data is not the same as knowledge, as we showed in the pyramid. So this is what we are aiming for, and what we're trying to design in both our companies right now.
Yeah, and so looking at like the transition of technology between these spaces, you think about like technology in the industrial era was physical technology machines that help you build things. So it's really like taking data and allowing people to process information. So you're kind of going up one layer of hierarchy, getting into this second level where you have technological systems that are allowing you access to information faster, and more fluidly, transparently, autonomously. Um, that allows you to move more from like the information gathering phase to a knowledge access phase. So that's been sort of the goal here. With the application of AI, with the application of quantum computing, with machines moving more from sort of that information providing stage to more of like a knowledge-based stage, it's allowing us to move to higher levels of application and to get to knowledge, insight, and wisdom further with our teams, and allowing our teams to all get there at the same level, rather than having this sort of like pyramid structure where there are different levels of access to information and knowledge depending on where you are in this lattice, which
Just a quick
serves.
thing. Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt. There was the poll,
Oh,
and we have 78% design and 21% commodity.
I'm surprised that there are so many people that
yeah, me
actually said
too.
that. However, they're probably being very honest about the type of firm that
Yeah.
they're working for. So I get it. Thank you for the results. That's sort of what we expected.
Yes. Um, that's cool. So
So
for that 74%, yes. Go with
so yeah. So what I'm trying to get at is um, the technology over time is not actually replacing us. It's freeing us to focus on higher levels of work. So allowing us to focus more on growth, collaboration, development of knowledge and wisdom, and taking away sort of those lower level processes. So it's actually pushing us along if we utilize it in the right way, rather than just taking away opportunity. I think it's providing more opportunity for us. And there's a business case also for, I mean, we'll probably have questions about AI from people here, but I think like fundamentally AI isn't coming, it's here. I think you had Evan Troxel on here that shared an opinion about AI, that it's not even really going to be an option or a thing that we talk about as separate. It's just going to be woven into everything that we do. So in order to be wise in the era of AI is to master its youth and further invest in what we actually hold dear as a society, which is that human connection. Also, it's great for business. So organizations who are adopting AI are already seeing greater returns and higher revenue growth. I think these values are just going to like grow exponentially. And then it's just not going to be an option, as we have seen in other technology in practice. What's really interesting here, though, and how this ties back to our original conversation, is how people are actually using generative AI right now. The number one use for generative AI, which is surprising, is therapy and companionship.
Is that for
Number two is
architects? So architects need
no,
more
this is
therapy than
people in
others?
general.
Okay.
This is just like society. Yeah. Number two is organizing your life. And number three is finding purpose. So, really, what this tells us is what people are really want and what they're really searching for and what matters to us is not about like doing the work or like figuring out how to get their homework done or even writing like marketing copy or whatever. Um, it's about sort of these higher level issues that we face as humanity that really we can only solve together by investing in human connection. It makes me sad that this is what we see, that people are trying to get therapy and companionship out of AI, and that there is a missed opportunity in investing in those human connections as a business because people need it, people are craving it. So I think this only further emphasizes how important it is that we invest in those as a business, and certainly as architects.
And to wrap up, we want to talk about, Nico, your original question, which is how are Slantis and FORA kind of future-proofing their practices through people-first innovation and what we've been up to, like collaborating together. I'll pass straight to like what are we doing. As we mentioned at the beginning, like Leah has been like trying to work together and like we've been trying to collaborate for a long time, like having these conversations and when we got into this place, like we knew that we had kind of like this alignment, and it's like, okay, what if we are taking advantage of our collaboration and kind of like start developing some metrics on how we are actually how we can reflect what we're already kind of like having a gut feeling that is actually like better for business, like how we can measure it and how we can kind of like use our collaboration as a case study for this. And I'm kudoing our both teams, which are doing a fantastic job in this fantastic project. This came out, so Maru in our team, she's our leader of research and innovation internally. And when we started collaborating, I reached out to her and said, like, we know that collaboration is kind of foremost, and like we're both people first company. So how can we reflect this scientifically? And she came out with this fantastic idea on, well, this is what I was mentioning, like we know we are aligned, like how we can build kind of like a real world case study in how this is actually happening. We came out with this fantastic idea of measuring 4 axes. So one is the communication interaction between both of our teams. The second one is kind of like understanding and analyzing the deliverables itself, like how we are actually delivering like the whole process and even the end product on what we are doing. Then the fourth is knowledge sharing, like what are we learning from this process of working together and how we are harvesting that for our teams and within our teams. And then the fourth is like kind of the team culture and care, like how are we pushing for this? And we came up with this like really cool idea that we are doing, which is what if like we're both very heavy on Slack, like we love Slack and communicate through Slack. So we came up with this idea, like originally it came from Leah and me, and then Maru joined the conversation about what if, like, if we're thinking about people first and we are thinking about the intersection with technology, what does people like in a digital environment looks like, and like reactions and emojis are kind of like the first thing that came to mind. So we were like, okay, what if we start tracking all the emojis that we have through all our communications, and then we can kind of create a system that correlates that to the deliverables and figure out that the actual connection between our teams had a very direct impact on the deliverable of the project. So this is kind of like happening right now. We are tracking all the interactions, reactions, emojis, and how people are actually communicating in our channels. So we are able to measure and then compare it with other teams and figure out that what we know or what we are anticipating as a thesis is actually going to happen. Like, I'm sure of it because this group is like filled with emojis. These are some real case things. So this is kind of like a way of making tangible kind of like these two intersections, like how technology can really take people first to the next level. So
and I'm sure people are going to think like measuring reactions is silly and superficial. And you might think so, but it really does reflect a lot about the moods of your teams. And what I think is really exciting, Andy, is that you work with so many other practices. And so there are opportunities to compare sort of that usage against the results of deliverables and meeting milestones and deadlines and sort of see the differences there. And so it'll be really interesting to see if our theory is correct here. Anecdotally, I can say we are really well aligned from the technological standpoint. We are using all of sort of the same platforms. We have created systems that allow us to plug into each other's systems, even if we aren't using the same ones seamlessly. So like Slantis uses Notion. They've invited us to their Notion pages. We use Monday to manage things. We've invited them to Monday. We have the ability to communicate through Slack. We're working through BIM 360. All of these things allow us to work totally transparently. And that is what is enabling us to work so seamlessly together, because we're so well aligned from a technology standpoint that enables our teams to work in this collaborative way. But what I was saying is, anecdotally, we brought Slantis onto a project, one, because it's a large project, two, because it had an incredible fast schedule. And I thought my business partner who said yes to the schedule was crazy. I'm like, this is wild. We should not be agreeing to getting a permit for this project in like a matter of months. But I trust her. I know she's incredible. I knew she'd be able to do it. Not only are they making it happen, but the plan set that was developed between our two teams through our collaboration is like, we expected to submit somewhere like a 50 to 75% DD set for permit, and we're already into like 50% CD at the level that we thought we'd be at, like 50% DD. So we are well above and beyond schedule and development of this project, more than we were expected under a crazy deadline already. So I'm incredibly pleased with just this interaction. I think it's really exciting. And I think it's fully because of our use of technology and our philosophy for what its purpose is, because we get to spend so much time working together and collaborating together. So it'll be really fun to share the results of the study. I love that Andy has a team that does this. I wish I had a larger team so we could do stuff like this. It's so fun. I'm super jealous.
It took us years.
We're working on it.
There was a good question in the comments. Do you encourage people to use emoji so it's easier to track?
Oh, we haven't told our team that this is happening. No.
Oh, okay.
Correct. They're learning. So, if they're seeing this, they're learning.
Yeah, so they're part of an experiment.
Right.
Yeah,
If
kind
they're
of.
watching now, surprise.
And also, like, Slantis is very, very strong in emojis. Like, this is something that people share a lot with us. And we found out that, like, the Fora team is very strong, like, communicating and again, coming like emojis is like emotions. Like, we are super open and transparent and like how we feel and I think that makes a lot about the original trust conversation that we were having. And I think that, like, I'm absolutely certain that what we are doing here is going to have like a major impact on how teams actually collaborate, because it just makes sense that this trust is being built over connection, like over like human connection, like not about the project itself, but like really connecting and having fun and enjoying what we are doing. It's so obvious though, but like nobody's actually thinking it this way. It's just like we need to get things done. We need to get the project done. And like all the stack that Leah was mentioning, like the tech stack and then the people aspect of the project is what is actually driving success here. So again, maybe this is because we are both women-led companies and we are focusing on this, or I don't know, but like we are super intrigued about seeing how this plays out and then how we can compare it like with other teams and figuring out like if this has some kind of correlation of project outcomes, which I'm sure it does. um,
Yes. So the point is, um, we're fine with technology stealing our jobs, because really what it means is that it's going to take over the tedious, lower level work, the busy work, the stuff that causes us to burn out, the stuff that really doesn't like lead to fulfillment and purpose. And it's going to give us back what matters the most and allow us to invest in what matters most. And hopefully that makes the adoption of technology a little less scary for people.
Yeah. Do you think though that if automation and AI, assuming everyone use it, is it going to have an effect on fees and people are gonna have less fees? Hoping that doesn't happen and this we're
So
not squeezed even more.
our team has an AI work group, and actually tomorrow we're having a collab, where we're going to talk about what it means to be an AI first business. And it's intended to be very like blue sky, big picture thinking about what that looks like, not just using AI to replace systems that were designed before AI, but what does it really mean to be an AI enabled business that thinks about that first. And what I'm really excited about is that in conjunction with that, we're working on our leadership development plan that elevates people into a level of principal for our firm. Working with a consultant on how to structure that process of bringing additional people into ownership. And what I have pondered, we're a pretty young team. We're all sort of similar in we're like a decade apart in age, which is unique, and we're small. And so I want to support and bring our team up and develop everyone into a level of leadership that they could be a principal of this practice. But traditionally, from like a financial standpoint, what that's meant is that you have to then scale up your team in order to have lower paid individuals to support what would be considered this like top heavy firm if we're bringing all of these team members into a principal level. Um, and I resent that. I don't like that mentality. And so what's really exciting to me is the opportunity to have AI replace what we would consider like lower paid grunt work so that we can further invest in developing people into these higher levels of practice, and leadership, and pay them what they're worth by being able to cut costs from this lower space. And so maybe that's going to impact our practice scaling the way we would need to scale in order to support that. And so you could argue that there are less people that have jobs, but are those really jobs people want, that are low pay and that are like low skilled and that they don't have upward mobility and they're sort of being held down artificially? I think that that's a worse scenario. So no, I don't think we're going to reduce our fees. I think it's just going to enable us to have this like expert level team and have it work out and pencil out financially for us. Just super exciting.
Yeah, hoping so as well. And by the way, you can say hello to your cat. I just saw it on the background there.
That's a Nubis. He is one of my many associates that like to join me throughout the day.
Yeah, I do have more questions. So you mentioned that using AI is a must. How do you use AI at Fora or at Slantis currently, and what way of using AI has the most ROI at the moment, or is most interesting and helpful?
I can take that one. So we are having kind of like a live conversation about AI internally. Like we had a consultant that is currently working with us, that is coming from the tech world, helping us kind of like navigate the AI world. And he gave a presentation last week about like kind of like a bit about history about AI, like what is it, what is generative AI, and then how we are applying it within Slantis. Like I think, and it's kind of connected to everything that we discussed today, is if we are thinking of our company as a knowledge-based company, then we want to use AI to exponentiate knowledge. So what we are working on right now is how to leverage AI to kind of like have the information more available so we can kind of like push up the learning curve for knowledge and wisdom faster. So that's kind of like the conversation that we're having internally, and how this effort is directed. So the consultant right now is working on kind of like a GPT of internal Slantis, so everybody can have like more fluidity and access of information. Like we have a very strong, developed over a decade of working, like a strong wikis and like information. And the problem that I think every kind of like bigger or like mid-sized big company has is like you have the information, but people cannot access, or like they cannot get to it. So like AI, for example, is a really, really good tool to kind of like solve that problem. And yeah, just like we like to say a lot that if I'm doing, for example, a Revit family, and like I have to do some research because the family was a bit complex, and it took me some time to understand it and watch some tutorials on YouTube and whatever. And then I have someone next to me that needed to do the same research, and we are like losing as a company, and we're missing out on the opportunity to really leverage technology to share that knowledge. So like having this knowledge sharing mindset obsessively, AI is kind of like the perfect tool for that. So we are working on that space right now.
So custom AI chatbot. Is that
Mhm.
something
Yes.
for you, Leah?
Yes.
We're using it in a number of different ways, and I think we're really in testing mode, which is why we have this AI working group so that we can define what our policies are around AI usage. And what we know fundamentally is that we want to use AI in a way that aligns with our core values as a team. And if it doesn't, then it's not worth using. But some examples of things that we have done so far is we've developed our own graphic language for illustrations of our work. It took us a while to invest in developing something that felt very Fora, and it has a very distinct look. And I have plugged that into AI and shown it many examples and given it the parameters of what it means to be like a forified version of an image, and trained this model to then be able to take like a model view of one of our projects and then forify graphics for it. And it's coming out pretty well. So far, it has trouble with the fidelity of like the actual structure of the building and doesn't always get it right. Like it'll ignore a double gable, and I'm just like, get the double gable. But it's pretty close, and I think over time these models are going to get better and better and better. So that's one example. And then similarly, we invested a lot of time in developing a FORA brand graphic and language standards. So the language in particular, and how we talk about our firm and what our vision, values, and mission are. So I have plugged all of that information into an AI and samples of like past proposals and content that we've created to help us generate content for future proposals, to talk about our work for awards, that sort of thing that would take a while to like recraft over and over again, to just do that work for us. Because we've already done the work of deciding how to talk about ourselves and who we are, and don't really need to spend the time to rehash it over and over again. And then there's simple things like note taking. You know, we use Google for everything, and so we used Gemini the other day, and it did an incredible job at taking notes. And I think I'd love to make this point. There are a lot of different people with different learning abilities and different ways of processing information. And you know, we talk about sort of neurodiverse spectrum of minds. I in particular have ADHD. There's a lot of people that have ADHD. And I know people like myself struggle with things like listening and writing and taking notes and documenting things at the same time, right? That's a pretty common challenge. And it's been a weird struggle, like for people to take accurate notes and participate and be present in a meeting. And that's an expectation of our team members. And if that's really hard for you just because of the brain, how your brain works, it sort of sucks to be penalized for that. So just having a tool that can do that work for you, and then you can pay attention and really sort of latch on to the important points and just do the process of making sure that things are tidied up and capture things correctly in the end. That's incredible. I also personally use it to help with my mind that thinks about 1,000 things at once and has trouble with finishing things, to take an idea to like 80% and then have all of these different conversations or avenues with AI to help me like wrap up and complete things, or take it to a level of completion that I can then pass off to my team. So I think really it's going to be like a super tool for people who don't fit like the norm of how we've structured the world and businesses to function. I think it's actually a really incredible tool for enabling different types of people and minds and way in working. So that's for now. Again, it's just replacing existing systems, but the idea for the conversation tomorrow is to really think about how we're going to use AI in the next 10 years to position ourselves ahead of the curve and to, again, push ourselves into the next layer of what it means to be a progressive architecture firm.
Are you both using ChatGPT? Just curious. People laugh.
Oh yeah, I use GPT.
Yeah.
Amongst a number
Leah
of
is a pro. Leah is a pro. A GPT
my
GPT's
GPT's name is Nova. Her name is Nova, and she's my buddy. Yeah, we use GPT. We've used like rendering tools, Stable Diffusion. There's a SketchUp plugin that does like AI rendering. There's a number of online platforms that I've tested out. There's Notebook LM, which is great for like building in sort of plugging in custom information. Yeah, that one's great if you really want to control what information it draws from, because it's only going to pull from what you feed it. I have had limited luck with using Gemini in Google for things like helping me generate slides. It's not very good. But Gamma is a really great one.
I've heard of that one too, yeah.
There's just like thousands of awesome tools, and it's been fun to try them out. Yeah.
All right, that's a good overview. So let me show the slide again. For your contact information,
yes,
QR code if you want to learn more and contact Leah or Andy. So I'll just move on to close the show and mention again a couple of things, then we'll wrap this up. So the next episode of BIM Pure Live is with Paul O'Carroll. That's in 2 weeks away from now, May 14 at 3 p.m. Eastern. Thanks again to Piros for sponsoring the season of BIM Pure Live. It's a detail management tool for Revit, and it's quite awesome. Check them out at piros.com. And yeah, and finally, make sure to check out the BIM Pure membership at bimpure.com. So back to you, Andy and Leah. Yeah, thanks. That was amazing. I'm wondering if you have any final word or call to action or message that you want to say before we close this out. You can go first, Andy.
First, thank you. Yeah, the first one is thank you, Nico, for kind of like creating this context to have this great conversations and where our practice is going. And I'm really excited. Thanks, Leah, for joining this crazy ride together. Like it's been fun and so great to prepare even this conversation together. And like we're so aligned, and I'm so happy to be able to connect with people that are really thinking forward, and to everyone that joined, like you've made your first step into like at least having the conversation and how technology is incredibly exciting and cool, and like you don't have to be fearful of it, but like really embrace it and just full on, because it's going, like the future is great, and having these conversations just like makes me excited about what's next. So thanks to everyone.
All right.
I really would just echo everything that Andy said. Thank you for having us on this chat. And it really was a fun opportunity for Andy and I to get even further aligned in our thoughts in this space. And so thanks for letting us share that with you. I think also people who are listening to this already are aligned in the sense that they are invested in great technology. And so I would just encourage you to, yeah, I would encourage you to continue following that, and just hold true to like what your goals and what your purpose are, because there are going to be so many options coming at you, and so much investment in the advancement of technology. And I think it can probably feel overwhelming sometimes for those of us that are excited about tech. So coming up with thoughts on like, what are your goals? What is your purpose? What are you trying to get at a human level? Ignore like what these tools are, and find those tools that really support that. And that'll help you cut out a lot of the noise. Although also save some time for doing fun things, because it is really fun to like generate yourself as an action figure sometimes. We gotta have fun with it too.
Or as a Ghibli style character or something.
Right.
It just sparked a lot of really interesting conversation in the chat. You can check them out later. Lots of deep questions. It's a big topic, how tech's gonna affect us. So I think that's it for today. Thanks, Andy, and thanks, Leah, and thanks to everyone watching live. And the next episode is 2 weeks away from now with Paul Carroll from Oracle. So bye, everyone. See you. Bye.
Well, thank you.